Hello my dearest friends, welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. Today I've got something very exciting lined up because I'm doing a collaboration video thanks to Beccie from Beccie. She has lined up not one, not two, but more than 15 of us here on Booktube to talk about all of our favorite dark books that we've read in all time. And essentially this is not strictly romances, it's going to be dark books within different genres, so you can get like romances, thrillers, horrors, classics, whatever we have enjoyed we're going to recommend. So you can get a lot of different recommendations off of these videos, specifically to add to your TBR for your fall moods. So essentially this is going to be a great collaboration if you ask me, because you can get very many different recommendations off of us. I'm going to be linking their handles down below in the description box so you can check out all of their videos as well, and I'm really looking forward to all of their videos because I'm really looking forward to adding more books to my fall TBR, because I'm notoriously very much a mood reader, and whenever fall hits I definitely want to pick up darker books. So yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and dive in and let you know which are my favorite dark books of all time. So I'm going to start off with the books that are not romances, and the first two books are going to be books that I've read a very long time ago, but they have kind of opened up the doors towards me loving reading in general. I read them when I was a teenager. The first one being 1984 by George Orwell. This is very much a modern classic, and I think it's a book that maybe not all teenagers need to read, but definitely everyone needs to read at some point in their life, because it's a book that definitely deals with very uncomfortable but very contemporary topics. Essentially this book is very much a dystopian novel of the hero living in this very grim kind of a society that is governed by this party, and it's very much a totalitarian kind of a situation, politically speaking. And as the progression of the book develops, the hero starts to rebel against the system, against the political setup within this society, and specifically against what is called Big Brother. It's kind of this entity within this book that I think has gotten a life of its own in our contemporary times, basically. And why it's dark, you would ask. It's not only the fact that there are some really grim and dark scenes within this book when it comes to what the hero goes through, it's also the fact that it's very much something that predicts, it's kind of like a foreshadowing of what society can look like if we let political governing turn into a monster. And it's exactly what we're living through right now, essentially, and that's the grimmest kind of foreshadowing if I've ever seen one. So essentially 1984 is one of the darkest books psychologically, and also maybe to some extent also the themes that it deals with are quite dark, so it really is gripping you once you're reading it. You just know that there's not going to be a very much happily ever after for any of these characters. So yeah, this one is definitely one of the top reads for me, because even though I felt quite uncomfortable, even though maybe when I was reading it I did not understand every single thing about it at that time, the more I'm thinking about it and the more you hear people referring to George Orwell in 1984, the more you're thinking of what you have read and what you remember out of that book. And it's quite a lot. Even though it was quite a while ago that I read it, I definitely do remember quite a few scenes out of that book. So yeah, this one is one of my top reads of all time in general, and then it serves as a very good reminder for all of us that we need to read it and kind of link it back to what we don't want to see in our contemporary societies. The second book is another book, again from my teen years, that is also a dystopian novel. There is this red thread that runs through my teenage years, and there is one person who is responsible for that, but that's another story for another time. We've got the book Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is a book that I've read 2 times in my life actually, and it's a book that, while it's not as dark in terms of the specific scenes, you don't see any kind of like murders or any kind of very dark things happening, just the psychological warfare within that book, and the fact that we're essentially dealing with a society that wants to destroy past knowledge and wants to control intelligence, wants to control the way people think freely. That is probably one of the most grim things that I can imagine as someone who is wanting to have my intellect challenged, wants to develop all of my thoughts, and wants to grow with reading and with just learning more from other people, from people who know more than me. And this book deals with a dystopian kind of place where books are forbidden, and the fire department is actually tasked with burning books. So if they find books anywhere, they burn them. And our hero is one of those firefighters who essentially gets roped into discovering knowledge for the first time and wanting to know more about books and wanting to rebel against the system again. And it's quite a compelling read. It's quite a quick read as well. So yeah, it's definitely a dark book psychologically, not so dark in terms of the scenes within it, but yeah, I definitely consider it to be a dark book. So I think that I definitely need to maybe state that I didn't do in the intro is darkness is subjective, right? So it's not going to be, so some of the books here may not be the darkest thing that you've ever encountered, or they may be quite darker than what you would actually love to see in your book. So please try to see which of these books might compel you to read the types of books that I think that are dark, or maybe just see whether they're your cup of tea, because they might not be. It's just that darkness is something that again is so subjective. It could be that you're thinking of my list like Child's Play, or you're thinking like I'm never picking any of these books up once I talk about them. But yeah, that's the beauty of reading, right? You can pick exactly what is suitable to your taste. So I'm just going to recommend quite a few books that are just part of my taste here, and if you have similar taste to me, you might want to pick them up. And if not, then you have 15 other booktubers to browse their list through to just enjoy all of their recommendations as well. So without further ado, let's just continue on with the next book. The next book is also not a romance. This one was quite big, I think maybe 2 years ago. The book is called My Dark Vanessa, and the author of this book is Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book centers on a heroine who is describing her relationship with her professor, and it very much deals with grooming. It very much deals with manipulation of someone who is in a powerful position over someone who is very vulnerable in a very vulnerable age. And it's a very difficult read, at least it was for me, because I'm a woman and I was once a very impressionable teenager as well, and I could very easily imagine myself in the heroine's shoes. So for me it was quite a difficult read, but that read basically was also something that I felt was very necessary for me to go through as a woman of a certain age, of a woman who is also a mother. I may not be a mother of a daughter yet, maybe someday, but still I feel like we need to be aware of the dangers of people in certain positions and how we need to protect our children from these situations essentially, and how they affect our children overall, and how they need to feel like they have a safe place to share experiences that may feel uncomfortable if they find themselves in such situations. So yeah, it just left me thinking about all kinds of things, and I definitely, while I didn't enjoy that read in terms of enjoyment of like, you know, reading the next best kind of book that is going to leave you feeling giddy, it definitely left a lot of room for thought and a lot of room for feeling all these feelings that you need to feel when you get encountered with, or when you encounter such types of situations. So yeah, it was a very impactful read, and I definitely think that a lot of people need to pick it up just to see that these are real kinds of situations. It's not, by the way, I think at least it's not like autobiographical or anything. It's just a book that opens up your eyes towards these kinds of situations. Now I'm moving on to books that are romances, and the first book that I want to mention is a book that I read a few years ago and it left a very big impact on me. I don't think that I've read a book that has left me feeling in this way since, essentially, and the book is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This book is a romance between a hero and heroine who both get kidnapped at the same time by this horrible serial killer who kidnaps people, makes them fall in love with each other, and then kills them. And the two of them go through the most horrific kind of situation together. They really have this horrible experience that no one has ever gone through in their own kind of bubble of people that they know. And then once they escape the situation, because they feel like they can't move on with normal life because they get out of it completely different people. And the kind of very difficult part within this book, that is also kind of a very big conflict, is that the hero within the book is actually engaged to be married to the heroine's sister. So there is this huge conflict within this book, but there is also this huge bonding between these two characters because of what they've gone through together. It's a difficult book to read. It will leave your heart feeling kicked and battered and smashed and crashed and everything that you can feel that is kind of heart-wrenching. And then at the same time, the whole time you're rooting for these people to really heal themselves from what happened to them and find their happily ever after. So this is a really special book. I don't think that it's for everyone because it does have quite a few triggering scenes, so you definitely need to look up the triggers for this book because they can definitely be quite impactful. So please look up the trigger warnings for this one. But once I read it, like I mentioned, all the feelings that I had, all the tears that I cried, all the emotions that I felt, I have never after that read a book like this before. So yeah, it definitely left a mark on me. The next books that I'm going to mention are part of a series. I'm just going to mention the name of the series and you can look them up. They are by Kel Carpenter and these series are the Dark Magi series. It's a dark fantasy romance, and it deals with a heroine who is out for revenge and a hero who is on a quest of conquering something of his own, and the two of them meet up and start working together towards their mutual goals. And the thing within these books that is quite fascinating is that this quest that they go on, obviously for certain reasons the hero wants to help out the heroine and then the heroine needs to help out the hero to reach his goals, but there are certain personal circumstances for the heroine specifically that lead her to do something horrific in books. I think 3 and 4, I'm not sure which books, because there are 5 books within this series and they're quite short, so you can definitely binge them. And the thing is that those scenes are also engraved in my mind because I've not read something like that before. The things that she did to kind of get her revenge are quite graphic. So yeah, please look up the triggers for this one as well. Though I do have to say that because it's only like towards the end of the book, so I think books 3 and 4, that you have those scenes, you already get attached to those characters quite a lot in books 1 and 2, and you want to see her get her revenge. So once you get to that part of the book, you're like, okay, it's warranted. So I don't know, I could excuse the fact that she was quite cruel at some point within the books because it was just worth it for me as a reader to see her get her revenge. So yeah, these books I thought were just wonderfully done. I think that they're quite underhyped. I think a lot of fantasy books get really hyped very easily, but then the ones that I've read that are really underhyped are kind of flying under the radar, and I really want more people to pick up this series because they're quite worth it. Gwen Darkova is one of my favorite characters, or one of my favorite heroines this year, and yeah, I please urge you to look up this series because they're definitely worth it. So a series that is definitely appropriately hyped that I'm also going to mention on here is the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. I just recently read these books as well. It's 5 novellas that are bundled up in a series. I read them at the start of this year. I know I'm quite late to the hype, but I want to mention them on here because they really truly are a series of books that I really enjoyed that have dark scenes within them. Within this one, we've got a serial killer who is the female main character and an FBI profiler who is the hero. So essentially they're playing a cat and mouse game. He is essentially chasing her, and he doesn't know that actually he meets her under different circumstances, and he is falling into a relationship with her without him knowing that she's actually the serial killer that he is chasing this whole time. And the dark scenes within this series of books is the killings that are going on, and they're all at the hands of our heroine. So essentially be prepared that there's going to be some graphic dark scenes within this book or within these books. But granted, once you find out why she's doing everything, you kind of start to excuse her psychotic kind of behavior. Obviously in real life we don't condone any of these things, but within the fictionist world that we're reading, we want the heroine to get her revenge and her happily ever after. So yeah, these books are splendidly done. I really enjoyed all of them. I enjoyed the ending to these books as well, and I definitely would recommend them too. Another book that is quite popular, but I still want to mention it because it is one of the darkest books that I've read and I did really appreciate and enjoy it, is Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. This is a historical pirate dark romance where we've got a lot of triggers within this book. We've got sexual assault, dubious consent, we've got abuse, violence, a lot of violence, and a lot of violence against the heroine specifically. And it's really difficult to get through certain scenes within this book. So if you are triggered by sexual abuse and by a lot of violence against the female main character, please be cautioned that this happens within this book. But at the same time, I think the author has done such a splendid job of creating such a graphic description of not only those graphic scenes, but also of the darkness of the characters. So really their inside struggle, all of their inside struggles. So because we've got 3 characters within this book that are front and center, and all of them have their own darkness that they're battling with, and they are kind of needing to not really overcome, but to start living with. I don't know if I'm explaining this all too well, but essentially it's just such a wonderfully depicted struggle that these 3 characters go through, and how they find each other and find a balance between what they feel in terms of their love for one another, but also the darkness that has to be overcome between them. So it's a very graphic, very dark historical romance book, but it's definitely worth it. The next book I'm going to recommend is one that I really enjoyed. It's again a dark fantasy romance book that has a great audiobook. It's called A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain. It has duet narration, the audiobook, and it's really splendidly done. We've got a plot where the society needs to maintain the balance of their tribe, of their people, by sacrificing one of their own to this demon, because the demon has promised that he will keep out evil if they make this sacrifice, which is essentially a woman who is going to be his bride. And the heroine is our bride who gets sacrificed within this ritual. She gets sent to this underworld where she's going to be living with this demon. And there are quite a few dark scenes within this book, but at the same time there's a lot of golden retriever energy from our demons. So me, as a romance loving girly, someone who has this very tough and dark exterior but this very kind and mushy interior, it just melts my heart when I read such types of books. So I really enjoyed this one, and I would definitely recommend it too. I don't want to sign off this video on a very kind of dark note, even though I'm recommending all dark books here. So I'm going to mention a fun dark book as my last book, and that is Lights Out by Vanessa. I just recently read this book and I really enjoyed it. It does have kind of an unhinged plot, but it's all in good fun. We've got a heroine. She has this kink for masked men, and she goes onto her social media. She finds this profile of this guy that she is finding very appealing. He is this masked guy. He makes this very sensual videos, and she starts commenting on his videos, and he takes notice of her because of certain reasons. And then he starts provoking her by making content that is specifically targeted towards her. And she starts to notice. And then he starts stalking her. She starts noticing that he's stalking her. And from that point, it becomes a very fun, very engaging, very action-filled, but also very fun and banter-filled kind of situation. And the romance between them is quite obsessive, quite spicy, quite possessive, and I really loved it, and I would definitely recommend it too. So my friends, these were all the dark books that I wanted to recommend to you today. Thank you so much, Beccie, for including me in this list of collaborators. And thank you so much for coming up with this idea, because I think that everyone is in the mood for dark books during fall. So this was just a great start for everyone to add more books to their TBR. So yeah, thank you so much again, Beccie, and I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's videos. Please don't forget to subscribe and also check out all of their videos in the description down below. I hope to see you in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and bye-bye.